cutting-edge television station, interfacing Africa and the rest of the world with excellent documentaries, business news, investment opportunities, lifestyle, and much more. We're currently on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. You can also view while on the move at www.firstviewtv.tv. First View TV, changing the narrative.
We'll be talking about high-rise and complex structures in Nigeria, the rules of engagement. This is brought to you by the Nigerian British Infrastructure Group, a subgroup of the Nigerian British Business Forum, and we have been operating for a number of years where we've been recognizing high-flying Nigerians and Nigerian British entrepreneurs in the UK as well as other parts of the world. But out of our celebration and our structure, we've come up with subgroups, and the Nigerian British Infrastructure Group is a subgroup out of the Nigerian British Business Forum. And our focus with the Nigerian British Infrastructure Group is really to have the best practices from the UK as well as other parts of the world, and use that as an offshoot or as a standpoint to really engage and influence the engagement in Nigeria when it comes to infrastructure. One thing that we know for certain is that infrastructure deficit is very much in Nigeria at the moment. There's a deficit of infrastructure for the for our population. We are way below when it comes to infrastructure per person. And one of the key things that we want to do within the Nigerian British Infrastructure Group is really bring out these best practices, engage stakeholders in Nigeria, bring together those experts in the diaspora as well, and make sure that we build our nation. Because one thing that is core to our hearts, we might be scattered across the world, we might be in different parts of the world, but Nigeria lives in our hearts, and everything that happens in that country touches us directly and indirectly. And one of the news that came out a couple of weeks ago, which was a very terrible news about the collapse of the building in Ikoyi, and that really touched our hearts because it affected everyone. There was a diasporan who I know who had gone out to Nigeria and had been doing some work in there. He also sadly lost his life in that collapse. And we also had different people from different walks of life. So it's not something that just touches the populace, it touches the elites, it touches across the different sectors and the different demographics that we have in Nigeria. So this is really key for us, that this conversation is really key to addressing these issues. This is not the first time we've heard of it. We've heard of it almost every year. We have a minimum of 5 high-profile collapses that would hit our mainstream news. But that's minus the ones that don't hit our mainstream news. So we really need to engage, and that's why we've put together this program today. And we're proudly sponsored by Ciber Technologies, and I will be playing the video in a moment.
Let us usher you into the world of Ciber Technologies. At Ciber Technologies, we cater for all your salient digital and technological needs, such as web and app development, domains and hosting, web security services, broadcast streaming, and a host of other exciting technological features. For further information, why not visit us at www.cbartechnologies.com. Ciber Technologies, redefining the art of digital technology.
Technologies, we do appreciate your sponsorship of today's event, and we look forward to further engagement. So without further ado, I am going to start off by inviting our first speaker, who's going to be talking about, who's going to be looking at a step-by-step approach to developing high-rise and complex structures in Nigeria. Without further ado, let me invite our first speaker, Mr. Adewale Ogundalu. He was born in Nigeria, had his primary education at Methodist Primary School, Okeado in Ibadan, and secondary education at the prestigious Government College, Ibadan. Mr. Wale graduated from the University of Lagos with a BSc Honours in Civil Engineering, second class upper division in 1984, and an MSc in Civil Engineering Structures in 1988. In addition, after practicing civil engineering for many years, Mr. Wale commenced the PhD Civil Engineering program at University of Lagos in 2010 and graduated with a PhD Civil and Environmental Engineering, Geotechnics, and Foundation Engineering in 2015. To remain competitive internationally, Mr. Wale attended the University of Western Ontario, London, Canada, for a one-year Master of Engineering in Geotechnics in 2016 and graduated with a Civil Engineering Master's degree in 2017. In 1984, Mr. Wale commenced his professional engineering career as an executive assistant in civil engineering with Ogun State Property and Investment Corporation, OPIC Estates, Agbara in Ogun State, Nigeria. He rose to the position of senior executive assistant and head of works section before leaving in 1989 to join the private sector. In 1989, Mr. Wale worked as a structural engineer with Over Arab and Partners in Lagos, Nigeria, and Burton Nigeria Limited. He handled many projects and contracts as a project structural engineer and supervisor in various parts of Nigeria, Lagos, Port Harcourt, as well as other parts of the country. In 2000 to 2021, Mr. Wale went into private consultancy and academics to pass knowledge to civil engineering students. He was a lecturer at Civil Engineering Department, Yaba College of Technology. Mr. Wale has worked at the Pavement and Foundation Section, Material Specification and Standards Organization at the Ministry of Transportation, Ontario, Canada, from September 2019 to 2021. And he is returned to Nigeria in March 2021, where he has been involved in the design and rehabilitation of various highways in Ontario, Canada, as well as parts of Nigeria. Mr. Wale has two areas of professional specialization: structures and geotechnics and foundation. Is a registered engineer, licensed in practice civil engineer in both Nigeria and Ontario. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to invite Mr. Wale Ogundalu.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Wale Ogundalu, and I'm here to present to you a step-by-step approach to developing high-rise and complex structures in Nigeria. So a single-story building consists of only the ground floor and the roof. A multi-story structure consists of the ground story and one or two or more suspended floors. A high-rise structure is a tall building between 23 meters to 150 meters high. And usually that is about 7 floors to 50 floors, while a skyscraper is a building that is 150 meters high and above. And that is a basic figures of a multi-story building and a high-rise structure. The design of a single-story building and that of a multi-story building, high-rise and skyscraper, follow the same principle. And that basic principle is to get all loads to the foundation, onto the soil, for the soil to take care of it. A step-by-step property development process. Step 1 is the pre-purchase stage, whereby the developer sources for funds, looks for lands, and it gets the land. Step 2 is the contract negotiation and land acquisition. In this time, it buys the land. Either you want to take it on lease or you want to take it outright purchase. Step 3 is the town planning and development approval process. Usually this is not followed in Nigeria, but in UK, you go to the council, you get the permit, and then you go back and do your drawings. Step 4 is the working drawing and documentation. In this case, you enlist an architect, he does the drawings, you enlist services, engineers, and other professionals, and they do the drawings. And step 5 is the construction period, in which case you enlist the project manager or a quantity surveyor, and he does the quantities for you, and he does the bill of quantities, and then you invite contractors, and they make the building. And then the approval stage. Step 6 is the construction, whereby you hand over the site to the contractor, and he does the construction. And step 7 is when the contractor finishes his job and he hands over the keys to you. And then you, the developer, you decide you want to sell or you want to make a quick profit. Professionals. All the professionals listed are all the professionals that you require on the site. The land surveyor, the architect, the structural engineer, the geotechnical or soil engineer, and then the quantity surveyor. Please ensure that you use qualified professionals. Engage only competent and capable registered professionals on your project. Step-by-step of design process for the building development. The architect's brief. This is when the developer or the client enlists an architect and gives him a brief of what he wants to do. The next thing is the architect does the drawings and then send it to the client. And then the next is the structural engineer's brief, whereby the client enlists a structural engineer who does all the drawings for the suspended and for the superstructure. In order to do the superstructure, the structural engineer will need a soil test report, and so engage the soil engineer. The soil engineer goes to the site. He must request the number of floors you want to develop, and he must request the exact location of the building. And he goes there, he does the test, and then he does his site report. The main thing you want to look at in the soil test report are the allowable bearing pressure, the soil profile. And then the structural engineer completes his design, including the foundation and the superstructure, and you hand over the drawings to the developer, who will now go ahead and process the approval. Similarly, the developer also gets all the service engineer, M&E, fire, and others, and they do all their drawings. It is better to verify professionals' licensure before commissioning him. This is to eliminate the use of quacks. 5 sets of drawings are required for town planning approval and the processing. While you are doing this town planning approval, the client can also enlist the services of a quantity surveyor who does the bill of quantities, and then based on the advice of the client, you can decide you want to do an open bid or a closed bid. Open bid, you advertise and contractors tender. Closed bid, you find a set of people that probably you know you have worked with before, probably about 7. You invite them to submit bids and they submit their bids. And then you select the best and then go ahead with appointment of the contractor. The consultants are required from the start of construction to the end of construction. You jeopardize your investment and property when you refuse to engage professionals in site supervision. Basic design steps. You plan the structural layout, which shows the arrangement of all the structural elements: the floor slab, the beam, the columns, and then the foundation. The floor slab are horizontal. It's like a table. The place you're at the table, and then under it you have the beams. The load goes from the slab to the beams, and from the beams it goes into the vertical columns, and the columns take it down to the foundation. Please, it is always important, as much as possible, make sure that your layout and your columns are straight. You do layout for each floor. Whether you are going to 100 floors, you must do the layout from floor 1 to 100 and to the roof. So figure 3 is a typical floor slab layout, and figure 4 is a typical frame structure. Design calculations. You design the slab, you design the beam, you design the column and the foundations. Basic design steps for high-rise buildings. In the design of high-rise buildings, you must check the stability of the structure under wind load in north and south direction and in east and west direction. You must obtain the wind load and distribute this on the structural elements resisting the wind. Most of the time, we use shear walls. Otherwise, you can use your columns, in which case you distribute it to all the columns. Then you also need to check for shear walls for any uplift. And if there is uplift, you find a way of anchoring such onto the supporting pile foundations. So basic signs of distresses in a building. You have horizontal wall cracks, vertical wall cracks, deflection, and settlement or tilting. The moment you see wall crack, you go on one side, you look at it, you move onto the other side, you look at it. If that crack appears on both sides of the wall and around the same position, then you have a structural crack. When you have vertical cracks, it has to do with the foundations, and then you continue.
Let us usher you into the world of CBAR Technologies. At CBAR Technologies, we cater for all your salient digital and technological needs, such as web and app development, domains and hosting, web security services, broadcast streaming, and a host of other exciting technological features. For further information, why not visit us at www.cbartechnologies.com. CBAR Technologies, redefining the art of digital technology.
So while we wait for Mr. Wale, we'll probably have him back to conclude his presentation. I will go to our next speaker, Engineer Gabriel Banjo Kaude Ige. Engineer Kaude Ige obtained a BSc degree in civil and structural engineering from the University of Bradford in 1985. He subsequently obtained a postgraduate diploma in property valuation and law at City University of London in 1995. He's a member of the Chartered Institute of Builders UK and a member of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. Mr. Kaude has worked on the construction of at least 12 successful medium to high-rise buildings during his career as site engineer, agent, project manager, senior construction manager, and now regional planning manager with Vinci Construction UK. He has also worked on a number of complex buildings and civil engineering projects, including roads, motorways, bridges, dams, harbour, yacht marina, tunnels, hospitals, schools, residential and office buildings in the UK, Gibraltar and Jersey Channel Islands. He has done some consultancy work in Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, and Gambia. And I'm hoping that he can make me his personal assistant so that I can follow him all around the world where he's doing this great work. I had a peep at his presentation. I saw some really fantastic case studies that he's going to be sharing with us. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. Gabriel Ige as he gives this presentation.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here today to share my experience. I mean, most of my experience has been from the UK, but I've had some short-term. I've done some short-term consultancy work in Nigeria and interacted with various stakeholders in the construction industry. Yeah, this slide is just showing a few of notable projects I've worked on. The first one on the top left is a job we're currently building, and that photograph there is not an artist's impression. That's actually a photograph of the project taken from another project which is 38 stories. This project is for the secondary campus for University College London, and it's based at the Stratford Olympic Village. Students accommodation, 524 rooms, 2 towers, one 19-story and another 16-story, sitting above 4 floors of academic space. That's the value of that is 100 million, and it's due to be completed in May next year. So we're working really hard to get that done. The second one from the left is a project called Altitude 25. This was built in Croydon, 2009. I was planning manager for that, right from inception to completion. 35 million £100. The third from the left is a Sikh temple in Southall, and that's probably the most complex structure I've ever worked on. As you can see, it's a dining room where 2,000 people sit on the floor and have meals. So you can see there's no columns within 22 meters. So there's a 22-meter span first floor slab, which is quite amazing to achieve. That was also successfully completed. The fourth is 29 Park Street, which is 8 stories in London Bridge. There's 6 floors of office space and penthouses at the top. So just move on to the next slide. Next slide just covers what my presentation is going to be about. Introduction, the project team and stakeholders, project program, permanent design, temporary works design, approvals, CDM and health and safety, quality control and project management tools. Right. So this is a brief introduction. High-rise buildings, well, in the UK are buildings which are 13 floors and above. Every country has their own definition of high-rise buildings. So this is not a contradiction of what this first speaker has spoken about. So construction of high-rise building is a complex process which involves the following key stages. I mean, some of them overlap and some of them might be interchangeable, but generally, this is just some high-level steps. Project initiation, outline design, evaluation, approvals, tendering, procurement, mobilization, construction, final mechanical and electrical commissioning, soft landing, and handover. As I said, some of these activities will overlap. In addition to the project team, stakeholders like the local council, planning and building authorities, neighbors, end users, safety authorities, fire brigade will be involved and have to they have to provide approvals and consent on various stages of the project. To successfully deliver the construction of a high-rise building, the project team should have suitably qualified key staff with relevant experience and skills and a track record of successfully delivering similar projects in the past. That is absolute key. Okay, move on to the next slide. So, project team and stakeholders. In the UK, for projects like a high-rise, when you're talking about, 50 to 100 million pounds, the client would actually appoint a client's project manager. The client's project manager will be a company that specializes in overseeing the whole project, because the client doesn't necessarily have that expertise unless he has an in-house team to manage that project. So vital that you appoint a suitably qualified, experienced client's project manager, which is not just one individual, it's actually a company like Turner and Townsend, who are international client project manager. So the client's project manager will have a project manager or project director. He will have a project quantity surveyor who looks after the financials, and then it will also have a technical advisor who would review and approve the architect's design, structural engineer's design, the MEP. So he'll be a multidisciplinary technical advisor. Those are the first few steps that are vital in starting this process off. You'd also have stakeholders and government agencies. Stakeholders are the end users. They get involved in and review the initial designs. Town planning authorities, building control, fire brigade. The next is the design team. So the client's project manager will appoint design team after interviewing them, obviously checking on their relevant experience, which similar projects have they done in the last 5 years successfully. They'll get references as well. And then you have the main contractors teams. So you have architect, structural engineer, the fire consultant, landscape acoustic consultant. Then you have the main contractors team. You'd have, for a project like this, you have a project director, regional planning manager, which is my role, senior commercial manager, M&E services manager, temporary works design engineer, senior project manager. Then you have a few project managers, senior design managers, construction managers, quantity surveyors, site engineers, logistics manager, document controller. I mean, you could have up to 30 or more staff, secretary, delivery, note manager, and then trainee apprentices, because how do you get the experience? On our job, this current job, UCL, we have 3 trainee apprentices, and we train them. They shadow senior construction managers, and that's the way you transfer the knowledge. You have to have these apprentices, and it's not just about academics alone. So what they're doing is they're doing day release. They're going to university. Well, they started with OND and they end up university, but they're doing it part-time. So they're working 3 to 4 days a week and doing 1 day university. So they're getting both sides. Then you also have part of the team who are quite vital as well, are the subcontractors. And I've just listed the sort of the packages, the works packages. Site setup. When you start on a job, you have to set up site accommodation, the cabins, toilets, and stuff like that. Then enabling works, you have to do surveys of the existing ground. There might be services, electric cables, tunnels, God knows what. You have to make sure all those are diverted before you start building your foundation. Then the substructure, superstructure, roofing. On this project, we have like about 60 subcontractors, and we oversee and coordinate them. Right, one vital tool that we use is, and I'm the one that manages, is a program, and we use a software to produce Gantt charts, and that covers. So at tender stage, you would have mainly the program is broken into 3 stages. Pre-construction covers what the previous speakers talked about, which is generally client's brief. Then you appoint the client's project manager, appoint the design team. Then you do outline design. At that, then you engage some specialist subcontractors because they do it all the time, like cladding, concrete frame. There's some companies that's all they do, so they're masters at it. So you engage them at an early stage. They will tell you the most cost-effective way to do it and techniques. Then you have cost planning. Your quantity surveyors, they need to be, as design is progressing, you need to be developing cost plans, just checking the cost, that cost is staying within the client's budget. Then you do concept design, town planning, scheme design, pre-qualified contractors, contractors tender. Then you appoint the main contractor, and then usually we do a lot of design and build in the UK, so he now takes over the design and does the coordinated and construction issue information. Then mobilization, vital that you have at least 4 weeks mobilization. I know in Nigeria sometimes they say, they appoint you and they say start on site tomorrow. It doesn't work. And then the construction phase follows from there. These are the stages of permanent design, because you have permanent design and temporary design. It's all self-explanatory. Temporary works design. Temporary works, the design solution is used to support the permanent work. So while the concrete is still not up to strength, you need to put in some temporary works to temporary support till the concrete slab and beams gains 28-day strength. Or we use it to support trenches while we're excavating for drainage, or temporary works is the foundation for tower crane, and also sometimes access scaffold for access, and you can put in some fans as well to protect people walking below, including the public. So example of temporary works is site boundary holding, site accommodation gantry, tower crane foundation, canty deck, hoist, mast climbers, and so forth. You can see there's some sketches here which shows the one on the left where you have a suspended slab as you're going up till the slab gains 20-day strength. You have to actually put in some props. So you have the false walk right at the top, which supports the slab that you're going to cast. And then below that, you need to have another 2 levels of props, just to make sure that, because the slabs below might not be able to take all that load, because the loads haven't been transferred into the columns. So you temporarily do that, and you crush your cubes till the slab above reaches the required strength, and you can remove some of the props. Approvals. Consulting engineer, he does the design, and then another in-house engineer would do an independent check on his design. Then you submit to building control. He does the checks and approves before we start on site. The client's technical advisor would also do his own checks and approve. There are also some subcontractor design elements, like, structural steel or cladding, which has to be, the subcontractor would develop the design and then submit for approval again to the structural engineer. So at every stage, everything must be checked and approved before you actually go into manufacturing. CDM regulation, construction design management regulations. It's a law, an act in the UK where everybody has responsibility, every player. And the aim of CDM regulations is to improve health and safety in construction work. Excuse me. It's a legal requirement. The golden rules of CDM. CDM applies to every construction work in the UK. Even if it's 1 hour work, you must apply CDM. Anyone appointed to work on a construction project must have the skills, knowledge, and experience to carry out their role. Each duty holder has his own duties that he must carry out under CDM. The role of the principal designer and the principal contractor must be appointed on a project with more than one contractor. There can only be one principal designer, and that principal designer is responsible for the design. Principal contractor is responsible for safety on the construction site. Projects with more than 500 people days or 30 working days and more than 20 workers need to be notified to the health and safety executive. Pre-construction information must be provided by the client on every project. A construction phase plan must be provided for every project by the principal contractor or sole contractor. The principal designer must create and develop a health and safety plan to hand over on completion of the project. The client, there's one bullet point I missed, that the client also has responsibilities under CDM. So everybody has responsibilities. Nobody can say, I blame you for that. You have your own responsibility legally. Quality control. There's some basic but very important quality control procedures. Before you even start constructing, you need to produce what we call inspection and test plans. You produce that by going through the structural engineer's specification and list out anything that needs to be approved. For example, the pole layout of the plan, where your construction joints are going to be. It'll tell you how many cubes you're supposed to test, slump, and it will tell you the layout of your formwork, and it just it's like a checklist that you give to the engineer, and he can use that for his checks. So basic checks before the concrete is cast is check the formwork, check the false work. False work is what supports the formwork, which is the plywood that contains the concrete. Check the reinforcement, that is according to the reinforcement drawing. Check cover, that is the gap between the reinforcement and the formwork, so the concrete is surrounded properly in concrete and it performs as required. Check for cleanliness. If you have mud in the concrete, it won't perform as it's supposed to be. Once you've done all your checks, the site engineer would sign an inspection sheet showing exactly what checks is done, what remedial works has been done before the concrete is gone. When the concrete arrives, you check the delivery note. We have ready mix concrete in the UK. Make sure it's the right concrete mix, because in some cases the wrong concrete mix has been delivered, and if you don't catch it in time, then you're looking for trouble. Before the concrete goes in, you do a slump test. Slump test that sort of checks on the workability. Make sure there's not too much water. You can see an example at the top, the photograph of what looks like a, well, if you're casting a slab, it looks like the slump is usually between 50 and 75 millimeter. That looks like a good slump. And then the second slide, you can see that the concrete's collapsed. That looks like for reinforced concrete, that looks like concrete for piles, but not for a slab. And then we take cubes every, can't remember, maybe it's every 14 meters or every 20 meters of concrete. You cast cubes, which will be tested at 7 days. If it doesn't reach the predicted 7-day test, then you know there's something wrong. So you test more cubes. If that fails, then you test the actual slab. If that fails, then that means the slab is not sound. You probably have to take it out. So these are checks and balances that will prevent disaster. And then concrete pour records. Every time you pour concrete, you mark on a drawing exactly which pour was done which day, so that if there's a problem, you can isolate that area. And then you also plot the graphs of your concrete cube tests, so you can see the trends. And if one area, you can see one area is lower than the rest of it, then you know there's a problem. Move on to the next slide. Project management tools. This is some of the tools that we use. Planning software, Gantt chart for planning and monitoring time. Contract program, town planning conditions tracker, because we have, when you get planning consent, there are conditions you have to meet before you start on site, and there are also conditions you have to meet while you're constructing, and also some preoccupation. So you need to make sure, and there could be hundreds, so you need to have a tracker, monitor them. We have a risk register where you identify risks and agree on mitigation to minimize the risks. Information required schedule. This schedule we give to the design team just to tell them when we need their design. Request for information. That is when there's a query on the drawing or something not right. We have a schedule for sending that to the design team. Inspection and test plan, I've talked about. Design program, procurement program. Every month we submit a client's progress report before we meet the client. We have a meeting with the client every month. Target program, logistics plan. A logistics plan will cover the movement of materials and plant. So there's vertical. We use tower cranes for vertical lifting of materials, and also the hoist for moving materials and men up and down the building. Then we have what you call a Snagart. It's an iPad that you use for taking photographs and also recording any defective work. So this is the last page. Tips. I hope I haven't overrun my time. Tips for successfully delivering. Tips for successful project delivery. Appoint a suitably qualified and experienced client's project manager. Appoint suitably qualified and experienced main contractor. Appoint suitably qualified specialist key subcontractor like a concrete frame contractor, groundworks contractor, piling contractor, mechanical and electrical contractor, cladding contractor. Those are the real key ones. There's some other important ones, but these are the key ones. And then plan. Check. Monitor. Approval of every stage of the design and construction is vital, and in particular, the substructure and the superstructure frame. Establish robust quality control procedures and processes. The structure of a building is like the skeleton of a human being. You cannot compromise it. Get it right first time. It will be safer and more cost effective. Safety comes first. That's it. Thank you for your time. God bless.
Engineer Wale, please, can you confirm that you can hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you. I don't know where I stopped.
I believe you're on slide 5 at the time.
Thank you. I do apologize for that. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I do apologize for that break in transmission. I was on slide 5, and slide 5 has to do with introduction, and I was mentioning that the design of a single-story building, a multi-story building, and a high-rise or skyscraper follows the same principle, and that is to transfer the load from the superstructure to the foundation. All vertical loads, all horizontal loads in the structure to transfer it to the foundation, and the foundation to be built without any unnecessary stress. Is 7 steps, 7 basic steps to property development process. And the step 1 is the pre-purchase stage, whereby you go ahead and source for funds, source for the land, and decide on what to do. The second step is the contract negotiation. You negotiate for the price of the land and you buy it, or you might decide you want to take it on a lease and the terms of the lease. Then 3 is the town planning and development approval process. Usually in the UK, you might have to go to the council, first of all, obtain approval for the proposed development before you go and do the drawings and all those things. Here in Nigeria, it may not be necessary. So the next thing is you do your working drawings, and then after you do your working drawings, which is step 4, you go and submit to approval for to take approval. And then the step 5 is the construction, in which case you negotiate with the builders, you select a contractor, and then you hand over the site to him in step 6 for the construction. You hand over the site to the contractor, and he does all his work under supervision. And when he completes his work, step 7 is the completion. He hands over the keys to you. And then you decide whether you want to sell or you want to lease the building, you want to make quick money or you want to make longer time. The professionals involved in the design of a high-rise structure is the same you will need when you want to design a bungalow. And this includes the land surveyor, the architect, the structural engineer, the geotechnical engineer, the quantity surveyor, the service engineers, and then the contractor. We encourage people to engage only competent and capable registered professionals on your project. And the client has the right to view your qualifications to confirm that you are not a quack. Step by step of design process for the building development. The first is the architect's brief. When the client or the developer goes to the architect, he enlists an architect and gives him the brief, what he wants to do. The next, architect draws the drawings, and then he hands over the drawings to the structural engineer. The client engages the structural engineer, enlists him, and the structural engineer does his drawings. In order to complete his job, the structural engineer needs the soil test report. You must do soil test report for every site you are building on. And under every building, you must do a soil test. And then the geotechnical engineer writes the report and sends it to you. You are interested as an engineer in the soil profile under the building and on the allowable bearing capacity of the soil. After the structural engineer completes his job, he gives the drawings to the client. The client also enlists services engineer, M&E, and the rest, and all of them do their calculations and drawings and hands them over to the client. The client then enlists a quantity surveyor who does the bill of quantities, and then they can invite bids. The bid can be open or closed. Open, you advertise to the general public and they submit. Closed one, you select some contractors and then they make their bids. And then you select the best 3 and then you invite them for further negotiations. After that, once everything is done, they move to site and they start the work. It is best to verify professionals and then make sure that you also have a agreement for residency supervision. Construction cannot start until approval is given. Select your builders. Then consultants are required from the start of the construction to the end of the construction work. You jeopardize your investment and property when you refuse to engage professionals in site supervision. Basic design steps. For the structural engineer, the first thing is to do your structural layout. That is the general arrangement of the floor plan. You arrange the slab to be supported on the beams. You arrange the beams to be supported on the columns. And the columns, you try as much as possible for them to be vertical and to transmit the load directly from the upper floors to the foundation. When your columns are not straight, you have more headaches. This is a basic typical floor plan, and you can see a typical frame structure. You can see the columns, they are straight and they go down. Most of the time when you are doing your design, you start from the roof and then you go down. I, as a person, I make sure that I arrange my frames in grids. And each column, I can identify them from the grids. I can call them column B12. That is the column on grid line B and on the other side on 12. Basic design steps, like I said, you design your calculations and you do everything from slab onto beam onto column and floor by floor. For high-rise buildings, you need to check the stability of the structure under wind load. You need to obtain the wind load and distribute it onto the wind-resisting elements. Usually, we use shear walls. But if you don't want to use the shear wall, you can use column and a frame structure. Then you also check that the shear walls, there is no uplift. And if there is uplift, then you find a way to anchor it onto the supporting pile foundation. So these are the principal structural elements that you design. And then basic signs of distress in a building, you have cracks, horizontal or vertical. When you have vertical, it's a sign of foundation problem. Then you can also have settlement and you can also have tilting. Tilting is a form of settlement, but differential settlement. And you can have settlement, everything settles down along the same direction. But once you have a settlement of more than 25 mm, then you may be having a foundation problem. Foundation. For every foundation, like I said, you need a soil test report, and the soil test report must be done by a registered professional. There are many quacks in the system, and this is why I'm mentioning all this. When the time comes to share some experiences, we can talk further on that. Reasons for building collapses in Nigeria. The first one I would say is faulty structural designs. Use of unqualified personnel, inadequate supervision, sharp practices, and then I will also say influence of foreign professionals. When we need to expand on that, I will do that. Investigation of the 21-story building collapse, what I would do as an investigator. I will investigate the substructure. The first thing I need is the soil test report. The next thing is I need a pile load test. I need a pile integrity test. I also need to check the bearing capacity and the terminal depth of the piles. These are areas where you have sharp practices. You have somebody, you say, do a piling to 30 meters. He stops the piling at 12 meters. One, you have reduced the pile capacity. Two, if you are unlucky and you have a deep depth of the pit, then you'll be putting your building on inadequate soil. The superstructure, I will check the columns, I will check all the structural, I will obtain the structural drawings, I will obtain the structural calculations, and I will check every structural element, especially the columns. The collapse is a total collapse. It is not partial, and that is what makes it more serious and a very serious impact. Engage only recommendations, engage only competent and capable registered professionals. Teach developers basic elements of structural design. Every high-rise structure must have experienced resident supervising structural engineer. Every high-rise structure must be built by a certified registered contractor. Use of direct labor method of construction for high-rise buildings must be banned. Every building is a responsibility of the Nigerian engineer, because when a building collapses, it is a reflection of the Nigerian engineer. So as we go along in our daily path, look at structures. And if you see anyone that may have a problem, call the government agency. So the building contractor must always have qualified engineers on site. For the geotechnical soil test report, like I said, because everything you are building depends on the ability of the soil to sustain those imposed loads, the soil test report must be done by a registered professional. And you must check that you are not using a quack. On the pipe foundations, the same thing. We have piling contractors now who are not really engineers. Some may have worked under some engineers before, and then all they do is get money, buy rig, and then they say they are piling contractors, and they go ahead and start piling. Meanwhile, they are not adequately equipped, either in terms of academics or knowledge. Material testing. Institution-based material testing laboratories like University of Lagos, Yaba College of Technology should be used in advisory capacity and to assist in material testing. As far back as 1990, as the staff of Ovierop and Partners, all our tests, all our contractors are referred to University of Lagos for material testing. And I can say there was little or no building collapses then. Say no to vertical extension. Once a foundation has been built and you now go and raise the structure, you are adding load, which has not been accounted for in the foundation design. I can share one or two experiences later, but if you know you want to go for 20 floors, you can design your structure for 20 floors and the foundation for 20 floors, and then build it to 10 floors if you don't have money. And then you continue later when you have money. So right from the beginning, design your building and the foundation to carry the number of floors you want it to be done. For the 21-story building, there are some other recommendations that you need to do. But because of time, let me just run to my conclusions. Engage only competent and capable registered professionals on your project. Clients can request a copy of the professional's documents. And if the name on that document is not the person you have been talking to, just know straight that is a quack. Consultants are required from the start of a project to the end of the project. You jeopardize your investment and property when you refuse to engage professionals in supervision. Every building is a responsibility of the Nigerian engineer. Institutional-based material testing laboratories are highly recommended. Say no to vertical extension. Thank you. Have a nice day, sir.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ogundalu. Thank you for that really powerful and insight that you've shared. Without further ado, I do look forward to the questions. I have some questions written down, but we'll come back to that towards the end. But I want to bring up the next speaker. The next speaker is Mrs. Udo Okonjo. Mrs. Udo Okonjo is an international lawyer and astute real estate entrepreneur who is currently the Chief Executive Officer and Vice Chairman of Fine and Country West Africa. She also serves as an independent director and chair of the Governance and Remuneration Committee on the board of CAP PLC, a subsidiary of UACN PLC, one of Nigeria's oldest and largest publicly listed conglomerates. Mrs. Okonjo is a seasoned legal practitioner who was admitted to the Nigerian Bar Association and New York Bar in 1991 and 1994, respectively. She has had a successful legal and entrepreneurial journey career for more than 3 decades. Udo acted as the senior special advisor on legal and constitutional matters to the Senate President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and was a partner at a leading commercial law firm, Templars Barristers and Solicitors. As the best graduating female student at the Nigerian Law School in 1991, Mrs. Udo Okonjo was awarded the prestigious British Chevening Scholarship to study at the University of London, King's College School of Law, where she graduated with a master's degree in law, specializing in corporate and commercial law. She's also the founder and chief igniter of the Inspired Women of Worth Network, a business and lifestyle network for African female entrepreneurs and change makers. She's also the founding chair of IWOW, that's Inspired Women of Worth Leadership Academy, an institution established to transform society through empowered female leaders, along with Ignite Africa, an initiative to enrich, transform, and connect the next generation of African entrepreneurs through experiential learning. Notably, recently under her leadership, Fine and Country West Africa has launched a cutting-edge real estate leadership development program in collaboration with the Executive Management Division of the prestigious Lagos Business School. She believes in inspiring and empowering African entrepreneurs to think big and live their best lives while building purposeful, prominent, and profitable businesses. She believes that true African transformation will start with champions who take responsibility for changing their lives and others around them through right thinking and actions. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to invite Mrs. Udo Okonjo.
Thank you very much, Sean. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say good morning and thank you to the organizers of this very important forum, the Nigerian British Infrastructure Group. Prince Afolabi, I say thank you for the privilege to be here. Thank you, Sean. I'm going to go right into my presentation over the next 15 minutes. My specific topic is on investing in luxury residential high-rise properties. What are the factors to consider? Before I go into the presentation, I'd like to share a quote by a woman I refer to as a power woman, Audrey Hepburn, in which she says, "I don't believe in collective guilt, but I do believe in collective responsibility." And I would like to echo those very thoughts, especially as we all in this particular forum have in mind the tragedy that happened a few weeks ago in Ikoyi, which is the main place where Fine and Country West Africa not only has its office, but also serves our clients all across Nigeria. With that in mind, I want to focus my presentation on the end user point of view. We are a real estate marketing firm. We're also an advisory firm, and we specialize in off-plan and new build developments, mainly in the luxury residential and in the prime commercial. As a result of that, pretty much 99.9% of all the projects that Fine and Country West Africa deals with and has dealt with in the last 12 years are what you may refer to as high-rise buildings in Nigeria, mainly in Ikoyi and in Abuja, Maitama, Sokoro, and similar locations. In real estate, it's said that location is one of the core maxims. However, we like to believe that astute investors need to go beyond location. And we will share why in the next couple of minutes. The above properties are a few samples of some high-rise projects in Nigeria, specifically in Lagos. I would have liked to have included the World Trade Center in Abuja, which we worked on about a decade ago. But to my right, to your right and to my left, Nest Oil Towers, Grace, which is a mixed development project. The very next one is Greystone Tower, which is also a mixed development, both located in Victoria Island. The one next to it is Osborne Towers, which is in Ikoyi, that was completed many years ago, about 7 years ago, thereabouts. And then to my right, to my far right, and to your left is Eden Heights. I present a few of these properties, representing some of the properties that Fine and Country West Africa has worked on, and advised both developers and the buyers, investors, because the key factors that I will be sharing over the next few minutes will go back, to some of the ways in which we approach residential high-rise properties. Nest Oil, the main contractor there was Julius Berger. The next one, Greystone, was Dory. The next one was Capa Delbato. And the fourth one is ITB. I will come back to why I've mentioned that in a moment. We believe that astute investors must ask and understand the 5 W's of investing in specifically off-plan, high-rise luxury developments. It's not enough to look to invest in a property. The key thing in investing in new builds is that you're really trying to future-proof your investments. You are in a position where you are investing in a very high asset class with a lot of money, and therefore the investors in this category, and indeed in any level of real estate, must learn to ask the really tough questions. And those are the questions that I'd like to focus on. There are 5 key factors which we have presented as questions, and these questions form the core of the 20-something questions that we present in a questionnaire that we present to every real estate investor developer that approaches Fine and Country to bring their property to the market, because we believe that it is our responsibility to ensure that we advise the clients, i.e. the developers, and also protect the buyers, the end users who are either going to be living in these properties or who are investing in these properties for a return. They want to make sure that these properties are not only delivered in the short term, but that in the long term also these properties continue to give them considerable return. Therefore, we think from a point of view of future-proofing the projects. The first question that we believe is important if you are looking to invest in a high-rise development, and indeed in any property, especially ones that haven't been built yet, is to ask the first question, who? This is a risk management question. It's important to profile, to understand who is building, who is the developer, who are the sponsors, who are the financiers, who are the key contractors. These are basic, they're foundational, they're fundamental, but it's incredible how many investors gloss over this very important question. It's important that buyers seek to understand the track record of completion of the project developers who are presenting and bringing properties into the market. The same applies to the contractor. Will the building be completed on time, to the stated quality? Do they have a track record of completing on time and delivering the quality? This really has to do with understanding who you're getting into bed with. In this particular case, who you are rising up into the skies with. As we see, it's a very critical question. It's also important to think in terms of the future management. Who will be managing this property? These developments lend themselves to being a very collaborative project, as all the speakers who've spoken, Engineer Ogundalu, Engineer Kayode Ige, who've spoken, many stakeholders. The government is a stakeholder, the regulators, the investors, the developers, the contractors, the consultants at the very early stage and throughout the lifetime of the project. I want to focus a bit on the financiers, and their role in these types of projects, because high-rise developments, it's important to ask who is financing. This isn't child's game. It's not the type of property that anybody can come to the game with. If you're building 20 stories, 40 stories, 15 stories, 10 stories, I dare say, you want to find out how is it being funded. This is a critical risk area that many people don't avert their minds to. Obviously, we have a challenge around funding in Nigeria. And so some developers actually structure their projects in such a way as to attract funds from early stage buyers. And they're trying to use these payments to build these high-rise. Clearly, the risk is obvious, because of the types of payments that they need to commit to versus how these monies are coming into. Where we have seen significant challenges in terms of quality, in terms of even the types of professionals that are brought on board, it's usually when you have developers who do not have the right type of funding. And so the who is not just about the developer, it's what is the source of funding for this project. I will move on to the next one. The next question then becomes the what. What is being built? What type of development? Is it residential high-rise? Is it mixed development? Is it commercial? These questions relate to all these types of projects, but in particular, our focus is on residential. And then the key questions then becomes, what's your building approval? Do you have building approvals? Do you have permits? What is the zoning for this? It's incredible to see how many times, developers come to the table and say, oh, we're going to put up 15 stories or 18 stories or 25 stories. I remember many years ago, some developer came to our office at the time in Victoria Island. We are going to build the tallest building in Nigeria, in Lagos. It's going to be 25 or 30 stories. And these very simple questions, what is the zoning for that particular location? How many floors is allowed there? What is the density? I mean, these are, this information is available to all professionals. It's publicly available. And it's a basic question as far as we're concerned at Fine and Country West Africa. Unfortunately, I cannot tell you how many times we have interacted with developers who don't have the answer to this question or who don't have the correct answer. Some say, well, it's zoned for 10 floors, but we'll go for 18. We will do something about it. As Fine and Country, our response is, when you get the approvals, let us know. Of course, we also ask for the proof. It doesn't mean that people don't go ahead and do what they need to do, but I believe that these are the questions that must be asked. So as far as the what, you want to know what sort of zoning. I believe that it's important for investors to ask themselves if they are in bed, if they are rising high with the right foundation, if they're rising, because if the foundation is wrong, and by foundation here, I'm referring to the legal foundation, I'm referring to the statutory and to the regulatory foundation, because we imagine that in the future, this could even affect the quality of your title. If someone was meant to build only 40 apartments or 20 and they ended up with 60, one wonders what will happen in 10 years when, the Pharaoh that did not know you at the time comes into place. The third question is the when. Completion risk is critical for investors. If you're buying into a development as a buyer, as an investor, even as a funder, a financier, when will the development be completed? Is the time frame realistic? I can't tell you that we have met any developer that has presented their project within a realistic time frame. And so with experience now, anyone who tells us and gives us a time frame, we tend to, from a marketing point of view, encourage them to expand it. This is an important question because it has very important implications. High-rise buildings cost a lot of money, and the cost of delays are very significant. And this is what tends to lead to compromise along the way. Some people compromise in terms of finishing, in terms of quality. Hopefully they don't compromise at the early stages in terms of the structures, the foundation, and all the other critical elements. But from our point of view, as a marketing firm and as advisors, we tend to view the full 360-degree aspects of the project from the beginning to the end. We believe that if you have an extended, significantly extended timing, it could affect the quality of both the investment and the particular project because of compromises that may be made. And the fourth out of the 5 factors that we look at is the where. I did refer to the question of location being the first maxim in real estate. However, from our point of view, we believe that investors, buyers, and users should really begin to look at location from a more in-depth point of view. So just looking back to the project that collapsed a few weeks ago, and if most of us watched as they tried to go in and out of that particular location, while that location is within Ikoyi, we believe that there are locations, micro locations, and locations within locations. You have Southwest Ikoyi, you have Southeast Ikoyi, you have, different, mini locations within locations, and each one has its value depending on the infrastructure around the area, depending on how it's been zoned, and a few other features. But in particular, with that particular project, if you notice the narrow access, and if you consider the number of properties and families and vehicular traffic that was going to happen, in and out of there, then you begin to look in terms of location. Yes, it's in an upmarket location, Ikoyi, but in the real sense of the word, how would you view that location? So location is important. And obviously, as a developing economy as Lagos, with the sort of population that it has, we're going to see more of high-rise buildings in the future, whether it's Eco Atlantic and in other locations, even the marina, where we're going to see regeneration and all of that. It's important that people begin to ask questions about the infrastructure to support the services and everything else, environmental impact assessments and all of that. My final point, as far as the 5 W's that we look at as the key factors for investors to look at, is what we refer to as the wow factor, which I'm not going to spend too much time on. Suffice it to say that it's not enough to say that we want to rise sky high. We want to touch, heaven or go wherever we want to go. The question is, what does it take to create those things? When we look at Dubai, Singapore, and all of those locations in creating the wow factor, they definitely were using the top, whether it's the professionals, the minds, and the specialists, and all of that. So the wow factor is always important when you talk about high-rise residential, but we should not compromise the wow factor, or we shouldn't, because we want to get the wow factor, forget to actually do the work that it takes. I'm just going to wrap up in the next minute or two with our key recommendations. Regulation, we can't speak enough about it. It's not enough to have recommendations. It's important that we actually have regulations that are not just there, but actually enforced. It's important as we learn from the UK and other locations. Luckily, this forum is doing that because we're exchanging knowledge, that we begin to, as stakeholders, to go for more stringent requirements in the sector, because what affects one affects the others. We believe that regulators need to be more diligent. From our point of view, there's no way that the regulators can be absolved of responsibility and potentially liability in what has happened. But that's not our call to make. It will really come back to those who've invested and all the other stakeholders. Due diligence cannot be overemphasized. It's absolutely critical. The who, the what, the where, understanding in particular the who is building, and across the whole chain, the consultants and all of that. I dare say that when you're talking about high-rise buildings, you want to literally certify, contractors and consultants who have specialization in these types of things. I would like to wrap up on the legal considerations, because as we think about the tragedy that happened recently, unfortunately, it's coming across that, this is a big gap, an area that, people are going to struggle in terms of, we've seen buildings where people buy and they don't have receipts yet because their relationships or whatever. The marketing firm, the sales professionals, the brokers, the developers, everyone is responsible for ensuring, as I said at the beginning, real estate investment is probably one of the most significant asset classes that people will invest in. And so it's absolutely critical that you have your ducks in a row as far as your documentation is concerned. Unfortunately, even some of the biggest developers tend to treat this with, kids' gloves, almost like we'll deal with it later. And so hopefully with what has happened, people begin to see that it's important to get this upfront. You get all your receipts, you get the title documents, you get contracts that specify exactly what you're getting, so that along the line, when they start, when, for example, a developer tries to change what was originally communicated, you have a contractual basis to actually address this. Insurance, obviously very critical. And as far as stakeholders and having data and, assessing consultants, contractors, and all the key contributors to a successful high-rise, we believe that it's important that there is a central repository that actually rates, in a sense. If you think about, 5-star hotels, there's a rating system. If you think about Michelin star, not to talk about buildings where families, human beings, children, are going to be living in, surely there's a way for this to happen. It happens in other countries. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to do what is right by society and for everyone. All members of the building sector must be vigilant and report projects that are not in compliance. And we have a responsibility to actually make sure that our reporting, especially for something that's significant, is taken on board. Once again, I would like to wrap up by saying I do not believe in collective guilt, but I do believe in collective responsibility, and I believe that that's what we're doing here today. On that note, I would like to say thank you very much to the organizers once again for this opportunity to share our perspective, and hopefully I can contribute further in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Udokonjo. You have done that topic great justice. Thank you for giving us the buyer's perspective and making sure that we as buyers are also part of those stakeholders and we have the right information. Thank you very much.
Let us usher you into the world of CBAR Technologies. At CBAR Technologies, we cater for all your salient digital and technological needs, such as web and app development, domains and hosting, web security services, broadcast streaming, and a host of other exciting technological features. For further information, why not visit us at www.cbartechnologies.com. CBAR Technologies, redefining the art of digital technology.